Welcome to the Neurotic podcast, the Internet Computer Podcast with Jesse and Kyle. I'm your host, Jesse Friedman, and I'm joined as always. I mean, always might be a little strong when it's our first episode, but my co-host, Kyle Langham. Kyle, how you doing?
Doing real good, Jesse. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for doing this podcast with me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited too.
What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, you want to do you want to just jump right into it and let's talk about Motoko Bootcamp.
I feel like starting with a little bit of Jesse embarrassment and a little bit of Jesse confession and failure is exactly the tone that I want to set for this show here.
You want to don't bury the lead, just get straight into it.
Yeah. So the Motoko Developer Bootcamp is just about wrapping up as we're recording this on the 10th of March. So that was put together by the ICP Squad team that runs the Dfinity community website. They got a grant from Dfinity to create the Motoko Bootcamp. And the idea is to run an intensive developer training to help create new Motoko developers and create new people to create applications on ICP. And I very, very excitedly signed up. I was like, I'm finally going to do it. I'm going to learn to code. I am going to learn the command line. I'm going to learn APIs. I'm going to learn how to manage arrays. I'm not going to get to learning about arrays and immediately quit. And that's exactly what happened yet again. Is that the class is really designed. They had a beginner track and an intermediate track, and I signed up for the beginner track. And what I quickly discovered is I lacked the very basic how to be a programmer knowledge that you need to get into some of the more advanced stuff.
So this is like you're actually doing work in like the SDK and you're literally writing Motoko code. You're not just sitting here watching a video and kind of learning that way, right?
No, it's like an intensive class. So everyone that's doing it, they're putting in something like 10 to 12 hours of work every day. So the class is structured where you get, they have a Discord that the class sort of acts as like the classroom. And then you have every day, there are daily coding challenges and problems that you are expected to solve and show your work and create code and then turn that in as daily homework. And so you have to solve that the way programmers solve everything, which is Googling the documentation and resources and either finding someone whose code solves this problem and teaching yourself it that way, or working through some of the documentation that they wrote. And so I made it through the first day's problems, but I got to the end of that first day and I was like, oh no.
Once you start falling behind. So hold on. So is it instructor led?
It's both. So
Okay.
it's both sort of team. It's sort of like you have your own like class, which is sort of in school terms would be your laboratory group, something kind of like that. And then there were instructors too. And
Oh,
so
cool.
one of the lead instructors is a guy named Seb, extremely knowledgeable, really,
Hmm.
really great teacher. And on day one, he was in there with all the beginners, helping us understand the extreme basics of how to write Motoko code that runs on the ICP. And so what you do is you download what's called an STK, which is the programming environment and has all the commands. And so, you're writing code and you're telling the computer to do this. And the fine folks at Dfinity have written what is, the Motoko SDK, which is here's a series of commands that you can call that let you interact with the platform in unique ways. So if you want to make a canister call, if you want to write something to the ledger, if you want to issue an NFT, if you want to check a wallet, all of these things are available as what are called, as programming calls. And so
Mhm.
you learn the syntax and you learn the different calls and then you learn the problem solving. And so they had a whole bunch of all the kind of luminary instructors, all the people that are writing the software that, we use on the internet computer were there. And so there were people that helped even design the language we're giving courses on what you can do with it.
Wow.
Bob from Tonic Labs was there sort of talking about the system writ large. And then there's people doing troubleshooting. And so it's a whole bunch of stuff. It's a real mix of theory and hands-on. And, again, just trying to give everyone the tools to make applications on ICP.
Nice. So is this well, I guess how many participants were so how many learners were there?
It depends where, they had different people signed up, and then you had to accomplish a series of technical tasks to prove you were sort of that base level
Mm.
competence. So we lost a huge chunk of people sign up and never accomplish those first, prerequisite tasks that are like create a GitHub account so that you can upload your GitHub is a code repository. And so that's how you turn in your homework, was via GitHub.
Mm.
And so people signed up for it, and then people dropped out constantly at different stages. But there's a core group, and I'm really excited, to see what the people going through it are going to produce. And so the more advanced learners, people that already had some background and experience with how to code and how to, create web applications, their big project was creating an NFT minting system
Okay.
that runs. And so there will be actual applications that people have written that'll be released, I believe, at the end of this for the more advanced students. But what I
Okay.
found is I'm trying to learn a new language and write a book in that language at the same time. And that was challenging, which
Yeah.
meant that
Yeah.
those daily coding things, I didn't even understand the questions, never mind, figuring out how to answer them. And
Do you,
so,
do you think they'll do another one?
definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. They're going to. I think you can sort of think of the boot camp as in beta, right? It's the first
Okay.
time they just wrote this whole thing and they're rolling it out for the first time. And so all the resources from the class are going to be freely available after the boot camp is over, too. And so self directed learners that want to become Motoko developers will be out there. And that includes like the daily challenges, but as well as all the lectures and the Zoom calls, the question and answer, all these different resources that they build out, the guides that they've written. I mean, it's just an incredible amount of work. It's essentially a full curriculum that
Mhm.
they are then trying to get everyone shoved through in the space of about a week. And
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
that was for me the big holdup, was lacking that basic knowledge of everyone that seemed to really be succeeding either was an experienced programmer and was learning like a new toolkit that goes along with their existing skill set, or they're like, well, I know a little Python, I know a little
Right. Right.
PHP, I've got that base knowledge, unlike myself, who just plays a programmer on Twitter but has no actual programming skill whatsoever.
So, but now maybe you got a little bit of a taste. So then when the boot camp comes back around again, you can dive fully into it, right?
They have been they've been much more supportive of my ability to pick it back up and get back in there than
So
I
you didn't
think
get kicked
I.
out.
Oh,
You're not
no,
blackballed.
no, no. In fact, I think that was the hardest part, was when I told the instructors I was dropping out. They weren't mad.
Wow.
They were just disappointed in me. They were like, you were a very promising student on day one, and now we're sorry to see you go. But you know how it is. I just did not have. I felt like, since it was clear to me I was unable to engage at the level I wanted to, I thought it was important to step back and free up those resources for the students that are really putting in the legwork, to get
Yeah.
it done.
Hey, do you ever? So going back, you mentioned Bob from Tonic Labs, but Bob Bodley
Hmm.
was partaking in it. You know, do you think we can ever get to like an internet computer game? How how you have 6 degrees of separation for Kevin Spacey?
Hmm.
We could probably do like 1 degree of separation for Bob Bodley, where it's just basically you say, oh yeah, Bob was, the guy seems to be everywhere in the IC. So it's just like, oh yeah, well, he was in my boot camp. And then also, I did a Twitter space with him, or, that kind of stuff.
I'm expecting him just to pop up in your house
Um,
behind you right now at any moment. Hey
I,
guys, what's up?
I wouldn't be surprised if he pops into this podcast at some point. And actually,
Bob has got to be one of the hardest working people on the blockchain.
yeah,
He, is uh, just works so hard, and what they're doing over at Tonic is really building a lot of these base level tools that are supporting the growth of the internet computer in like a very, very exciting way. So, I, for example, am very excited about their NFT self minting
hmm
application that is apparently coming super, super soon. So right now, if you want to, Kyle wants to launch his Kyle NFT collection. It's a series of stick figures that you've drawn with word bubbles above them. And so you want to create that. You basically apply to Tonic and say, here's my collection, here's what I want to do. And you get approved, and they sort of have to bring you in, onboard you by hand, and that's going away. They're really excited to stop being the gatekeepers for that. And so they're providing a self minting tool where you'll just go to a website and just start uploading all your stuff, and then you're up and running.
You're good to
And
go. Then
so
you can just go ahead and mint from there, and then I assume list in the marketplace pretty easily, right?
all automatically. Yep,
Whew.
no coding will be required. And so if you look at the Crypto 90s project, they've been hyping things up a bunch on Twitter right now. So it's all 90s themed memes about ICP.
Hmm.
That is actually a soft beta test of the self minting tool that they're doing. So that entire thing is going to be
Ah,
published using that self minting application. And so I might have a few NFT ideas kicking around in the back that I'd like to publish, And so I'm excited because just new ways of opening up the internet computer that don't require being a developer for interacting with it, I think is really, really exciting.
right, right. Yeah, so I mean, and that's really from a technology standpoint, right? And actually, just to use the example of like Apple, right? So they used to control all the apps that we would run on the iPhone, right? And like the iPhone 1, iPhone 2. And then once they opened up the App Store, that's when iPhone usage just shot through the roof, and you had this huge ecosystem of innovation. That's kind of that mentality of, look, we don't want to be gatekeepers because that slows everything down. Instead, if we open up NFT minting to anyone, they can mint their own NFTs, they can have the marketplace set up, and then they can be more creative beyond just the box we've tried to put them in. So I don't know. I mean that if I had to say anything about the internet computer, it just seems like a playground for anyone with a creative idea to be able to just take pieces of things that were never be able to be put together, and now they can be put together in some sort of creative fashion that I'm sure throughout this podcast we'll probably touch on that a lot.
I'm just glad you brought up the first Apple analogy before I did, because I am always trying to fit jam a Steve Jobs quote into conversation here, and it makes me feel better to know that you're doing it first here.
Do you got
But I
a
agree.
do you got a quote you want to put out there right now, or?
I mean, the one I've been coming back to a bunch is the Steve Jobs quote of "real artist ship," which is
Okay.
something he said to the first Mac team to inspire them to, help not let perfect get in the way of good. And
Yeah.
that, if you're doing, especially with programming work, there's always more bug fixing, there's always more refinement, there's always more polish to be done. But at a certain point, you need to get it, things out there into the real world. You and I can record test episodes of this podcast all day long, but if we don't share them with the world, what are we really accomplishing?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that emphasis. But I agree. I think the iPhone analogy with the internet computer is really very, very apt, because the iPhone, while it did have some breakthrough technologies, ultimately, I think what it's about is fitting together existing technology stack in a really novel and interesting way that
Mhm.
opens up possibilities and lowers the barrier of entry so that everyone can use it, right? So
Right.
touchscreens existed, predict software keyboards existed, app stores existed, touchscreens existed, cell phones, all these pieces, but they got put together in a really unique way that created a breakthrough technology product. And I
Right.
think the internet computer can be looked at very similarly, where Amazon exists, Ethereum exists, smart contracts exist, IPFS exists, but the internet computer puts them together in a really unique, holistic way that opens up entrepreneurial opportunities.
Yeah.
And so, this was a conversation actually I was having earlier today, how ICP as a home for entrepreneurship and small businesses, and the ability to build on the abilities of crypto, right, and the blockchain ledger, opens up all sorts of new opportunities for building super, super exciting applications. And I'm always excited to see what people are going to do with them.
Yeah, I mean, we saw just to kind of build on that, we saw a good example of that, and it's probably small in scale, but I think it kind of drives that point home. Is the world already has a Reddit, the world already had NFTs before the internet computer, but the idea of dropping a NFT into a Reddit like application, and then using that NFT basically gates you into a community within the Reddit application. Like, so the OG Metals on Discover is that clear example of, you can't easily do that in Web 2 or even just on any other blockchain. The internet computer uniquely does that. Um, and in addition to that, the internet computer wasn't created in order to do that. That's just somebody said, "Hey, this platform is allows for experimentation and exploration, and let's try this out," and it works really well. So, to the scale that tens of $1,000s of value were created out of that when you see what the OG metals are selling for.
We get it. You have an OG medal. Stop
I don't.
stop
I actually
bragging about
don't.
how good you're. Oh, really? I've got one.
I know. You let me know that a lot.
But that's what I'm trying to bring up. Steve Jobs quotes. And hey, did I
and
mention that I have an OG medal?
and it's
I
for sale
don't
for
have.
$7.99.
Yeah, I'm taking bids now. That's why we're here. I don't have a Motoko, unfortunately, and I think those are really cool too.
Yeah.
It's hard not to get emotionally attached to some of these cool NFT projects.
So
But I
so
don't have
so
a
a lot of
Motoko,
that.
but I have a Motoko on my OG metal, so it kind of
Yeah, that's
double
pretty
dips a
sweet.
little bit.
I mean, you get this like so the OG metal. I mean, I don't have one, so I can't get into this gated community. But I'm assuming that it's great conversation, or it at least is cool to come get into a gated community. But the OG metals really signify, more importantly, I think they signify like you were using Discover to a point to where you got triggered in the algorithm that was used to determine who got the airdrop. For Motoko, for me, like the algorithm was, were you one of the first X number of Discover users? And so by having my original Motoko, it's like my proof now that look, I signed up for Discover at a time when nobody else really knew about it, and I got this thing. So it's almost like that. You're like, I can't sell this because this is my like badge of honor.
Your OG is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the first time in my life I was an OG in any kind of new technology platform. So and
Yeah, I think Discover, I mean, I'm really, really bullish on Discover. I think it's super interesting, really exciting. You know, I'll keep hinting at that I'm quietly working on an NFT project. And I'm looking at Discover actually as the back end to it. Because one of the sort of goals I have for my top secret project is to focus on the project highlighting the abilities of the internet computer. And I think building onto Discover is a really, really great way to do that as well, in terms of having NFT ownership unlock membership. Having different assets can unlock different abilities that you can actually create whole membership structures based off of holding NFTs in your wallet. And
mhm.
obviously, I'll make sure to get you one of my very special NFTs. I don't want you left out in the cold. You can be an OG on the
Awesome.
ICP Jesse NFT marketplace. But Discover is super cool, and it does. I think there's a really, really cool thing where one of the things I look for in projects that I get excited about is I look for projects that build on the technology stack in sort of a native way and
Mhm.
take advantage of it in a really interesting, powerful way. And so, what I mean by that is it feels natural and it doesn't feel forced. It feels like, oh, we have, there's a whole bunch of things that the internet computer is really, really great at, right? And then there's some stuff that the internet computer is not an ideal place to host your application
Mhm.
too, right? There's like it has different strengths. And so looking for projects that look at those strengths and build on those strengths in really exciting, interesting ways. And I think Discover is a great idea, a great example of that. So what they've done there is every Discover portal, and portal is sort of equivalent of like a subreddit essentially.
Mhm.
Every Discover portal is its own DAO as well. And
Mm.
so you actually have this sort of native blockchain organization exists in this text posting chat forum kind of space. And that unlocks all sorts of cool abilities to do voting inside of it and really building on sort of um, I would describe it as kind of like a cryptocurrency native community kind of structure would be maybe a good way to think of it. And I think it's super super cool. So you can take that and you can build other types of functionality on top of that. But it makes it like a really ideal place to build a community that ties into blockchain. Because if you have a Facebook group, there's no way to natively build into blockchain technology there, NFTs,
Right.
cryptocurrencies, any sort of a number of other things. It unlocks all this really, really exciting potential.
So is that so they've for each portal, if it's kind of its own little mini DAO,
Hmm.
I assume they've kind of built that in at the technology level and are waiting for the SNS to kind of supercharge that, or I
I
guess
mean,
does the SNS play into that?
I don't want to promise too much on other people's roadmaps
Yeah.
on our first show, but yes. So I'm really excited about SNS too. So just to back up a little bit, the NNS is the network nervous system. That
Mhm.
is the brain that powers the internet computer. You stake your ICP, that gives you voting power as well as financial rewards. And you can, if you are someone, for example, Kyle, you could create your own proposal and submit it. And we're going to come back around to that topic in just a few minutes because I want to hear how that's going. Um, and so the NNS is this overall, it's the governance system, and so it's the democratic system that powers the internet computer and gives it the ability to change and grow and add features over time. And so things are put up in proposals, like your proposal, or the Bitcoin native integration is a great example. And
Mm.
then so all of that power, and we're going to spend. I mean, I'm sure we'll come back around to the SNS. I don't want to. I don't feel like. Well, maybe we'll try and get a guest on at the future to take us to SNS school. Or sorry, NNS school. And so the SNS is a mini version of that that will be available to applications built on the internet computer. So if you want a voting and governance system, the internet computer will have a native version that's that toolkit that we're talking about.
Mhm.
That's right there for free. So instead of spending weeks and weeks and weeks developing and debugging and creating that system from scratch, you can just say, hey, internet computer, give me your SNS governance system. And it says, here you go. And it delivers it on, and you can plug that right into your application. And that self governance ability that's going to be able to build into all these different pieces is super, super exciting. And so I don't think I'm sharing too many secrets when I say that Discover is planning on integrating that into the system, but I don't know, that feature hasn't even been rolled out yet. And so it has to be rolled out, and then the coding work has to be put in place to actually bring it online too. So it's a lot of,
Yeah.
programming's hard work. That was my big takeaway from the boot camp is programming's hard and requires a lot of work. And it's really easy in these conversations to be like, what would be a good feature, guys, is this. And
Yeah.
the developer in their head is like, thank you for your offhanded suggestion of how to spend the next month of my life.
Right, right. Yeah, hey, this is only like 15 minutes of coding, so just why don't you just go ahead and do that? And then neglect that 90% of programming is then testing and, deployment and maintenance, and so that 15 minutes quickly blows into the full week of work. So, yeah,
It's
the S
just one feature, Michael. How much work could it possibly be?
yeah, exactly. I think the SNS is scheduled, if I remember correctly, it's in the second half of 2020. What are we in 2022?
I
Um,
don't even know anymore.
so yeah, so in crypto world, we've got a while to wait. But yeah, I honestly like the ability to like spin up a DAO. So let me go on a little bit of a, this whole thing's been a tangent, but that's kind of the point, right? But a tangent off of our tangent is the NNS is I think it might be in terms of like liquid value or total locked value, probably the biggest DAO in the world in existence. It's evolving pretty quickly to really figure out how a DAO should govern something as complex as the internet computer. And in addition to that, so it's kind of laying the groundwork for I think how DAO should work in the future. And in addition to that, with the SNS, that's going to allow basically any developer to spin up their own DAO native to their own application. And I think that what you're going to really see is like 2023 is going to be like the year of the DAOs, where really humanity, and maybe I'm being a little um, grandiose here, but like humanity is going to start to understand governance and participation and ownership in different ways than we have before. And I think that that's kind of and really driven by the technology that the internet computer is championing. So, um, I
Domination is, I think, the way we could with domination. Does that play?
domination.
Domination. It's more of a
Co-
written joke, I think, than an audio joke. So
copyright that. That's copyrighted. Said by Jesse.
no, and I totally agree, and I think it's about enabling features. So much of crypto is about code is law, right? It's a trustless system, so you don't need to build. You don't need to have trust with the people you're exchanging tokens in with. You only need to have trust with the people that you only need to have trust in the code, right?
Hmm.
Not in people. And that's what trustless is all about when we talk about cryptocurrency. And I think a DAO, I think of it as it's using that same trustless, believe in the code, code is law approach. But instead of it for being people sitting across the negotiating table, it's for people sitting on the same side of the negotiating table. And
Hmm.
that's what a DAO really is. It's unlocking the power of these trustless cryptographic systems for deal making together as one group. And there's a theoretical future where this kind of replaces an LLC. Essentially, it's a digital native company organization, provides a structureless way to make decisions and grow these organizations and spend money. And so it's so early days right now, the figuring out what are these things good for, what are their strengths, what are the types of businesses that they unlock and opportunities they create that don't even exist right now, right? It's such an open playing field. It's a blue ocean, in terms of what are these things going to look like in the future. And I'm very excited to see
Yeah.
see what people build.
Yeah, taking these different pieces, putting them together, and building up a Frankenstein that maybe has that looks something different than what anyone had imagined before. So, um, you'd mentioned about my proposal. Maybe I'll just go
It's the
quickly
it's
into
the
that.
I'm trying to think of a Frankenstein's monster joke for you though. It's not it's Kyle's it's not the proposal, it's Kyle's proposal.
Kyle's proposal.
I
Yeah,
don't think that's good enough. Come back later and I'll come up with something more creative.
that's the creativities in episode 2. Um, keep your bar. Hey, keep the bar low in episode 1, and then you can exceed expectations in episode 2. Yeah, so I put together a proposal. I don't want to go too much into the details because I think it can kind of get boring. I'll just say on the Definity forum is a good place to read where you can see the details of the proposal. If you're an NNS participant, you've staked your ICP, you hopefully have voted on the proposal. Actually, I don't have the number right in front of me, but it's the neuron indexing proposal. If you haven't voted, you should definitely vote because that's how you're getting your rewards. But
It is
basically, just
it is proposal 48491. It is as of now, including my yes votes. I'll just reveal that hard-breaking news right now. You're currently at 32.9% yes and 10.0% no. So you're about 300% overwhelming yes. What does it feel like to be the most popular politician on ICP right now?
I think this has been one of the most controversial proposals so far, and it's quickly going to that title is quickly getting passed. I think to the tax proposal that maybe we'll talk about next. But I will say this: putting in anyone who's done the proposal, maybe you can reach out and just verify if you feel the same way. But putting together the proposal and then getting it moved is like one of the biggest roller coaster rides of my life. I don't think I realized how invested I was into it. And so for a while in the proposal, there was a lot of no's. And I remember I went to bed one night and it was heavily yes. I refreshed it the next morning. It was heavily no. And I was just like, oh my gosh, everyone hates this idea. What am I missing? Um, I will say it kind of does lead to some good reflection, and I think the process I took to get the proposal in and get it discussed and things like that, I think that can use a lot of cleaning up. I like to say, that the decision doesn't matter as much as the decision process. If you can learn to make good decisions, you can, if you can learn to make good decisions today, that bodes much better for your tomorrow. And so I think I've learned a lot just from the process, and there's probably some improvement we can do. There should be a whole conversation that the NNS kicks up around that. I know Jordan Last has already put together something in the forum. I definitely recommend everyone partake in that discussion. But you said, how does it feel? I think I've lost like my hair is definitely grayed in the last couple of days because it's just a roller coaster ride, and there's a lot to do and a lot of community to bring in, and yeah.
It's like how presidents always, you see presidents, at the beginning of their term and they've got thick, luscious dark hair. And
Yeah,
then they get at the end of 4 years, their hair is all gray and or white. And that's how people can't see Kyle, but Kyle's hair completely white now, kind
it's
of.
putting together what's probably really a minor proposal and putting it through the NNS. That's totally equivalent to 4 years of running a country. Definitely.
I think
Easily.
I see no flaws in that analogy whatsoever, and I don't think we'll get any feedback about that. So why don't you quickly state what your proposal is and what it does and why you submitted it, and then I want you to kind of walk us through the experience of putting a proposal in, because I think encouraging people to participate in this democratic system is one of the things I really want to talk about and push on this podcast, is being involved and having an ownership stake and having, skin in the game for
Yeah.
how the system evolves. So what does proposal 48491 do, and why did I vote for it?
Yes, well, I can't answer why you voted for it. I think probably just to get in my good graces. So I'd show up to the podcast today. In terms of the proposal, it's basically a neuron. When you create your neuron, you get a 17 up to 17 digit number. That's the ID, and there's no list of those IDs that were created. So if somebody wanted to query a neuron to say like, hey, does this neuron exist? And if it does, how much ICP or even just how much voting power is in it, you can't do that. You have to try to figure it out manually through some sort of algorithm. So the proposal is basically just, can you Definity give us a list of all the neuron IDs that exist? So that way we can do more data analysis on the NNS and more understand what's going on the NNS, or do kind of like a vote recount if we wanted to, or basically just to have some transparency to what's going on. Um, so the pro is that transparency part. The con, I guess, is there privacy concerns of like, hey, why does anyone get to know that my neuron even exists? Is that right? And the other one is, and this is probably something I can't explain fully since I'm not really a programmer, but the capability based, which is capability based model for security, is just don't put out information that doesn't need to be put out, and so you might consider a neuron ID under that. Um, so the Definity kind of was more or less the one of the bigger voters in this proposal, and they publicly said, as part of their vote, they voted yes, and they said, hey, we think this is a good idea, we understand the complaints, so we're going to vote yes to this and kick off a conversation on what data should be accessible on a neuron. Should you be able to see how much somebody staked in an ICP, and can we make sure we can guarantee that you can't know who owns which neurons, or even if somebody owns a neuron.
All right. So if I could kind of I'm no data analyst, but there are all these neurons out there, and we know who a lot of them are, but we don't know who all of them are. And so it's kind of about completing the data set. And I think it seems like there's kind of a fairness, question here, that some people have unknown neurons. And so when we go and look at a vote, this vote, for example, you can see how a lot of the votes came in, but there are just unknown votes that are voting and putting their finger on the scale without being attached to a neuron. Is that a good summary of it?
Yeah, so yeah, a good way to say that would be the genesis neurons are all known. So if you're a seed investor, we don't know that which specific neurons you have, but we can see how all the seed investors voted, or how are the all the early contributors voted, and how much ICP is in there, whether they're dissolving it or not, that kind of stuff. But for the post genesis neurons, so pretty much most of the people I'm guessing who are going to listen to this podcast who've staked on the NNS, you don't necessarily, it might not be that your neuron ID is known, and therefore nobody really has any visibility into what's going on with your neuron. So um yeah, I think,
Shout out to our VC listeners that are out there and seed investors in
yeah,
Definity and the Internet Computer. We hope you're doing well.
there's hey, actually, let me use this opportunity to say there's a lot of seed investors, a lot less so early contributors, but the seed investors particularly, who who I think get crapped on a lot because of the amount of ICP that's been coming off the internet. But there are a lot of seed investors who have staked for 8 years, so they got their neurons, they made a windfall cash, and they said, you know what, I'm not going to cash out, I'm going to move it to 8 years, and so those ones particularly, my hat's off to you. And if you ever want to buy me a beer, I'm totally up for it.
Well, they can afford it, I think is what we've
Yeah,
learned. They can
yeah.
afford to buy both of us a beer. Yeah, I mean, the restaking thing I think is super interesting. One of the first things I read that you wrote that really perked my interest was the like very just a few minutes before midnight 8-year restaking that was so big that it
Mhm.
changed the results. For it changed how what the APY was for everyone that was staked.
Yeah, December 31st. So just a few hours before midnight in UTC time, there was, well, we don't know exactly how much, but there was, in terms of ICP, but in terms of voting power, there was like another 64 million voting power that was brought in. So that was like a 20% increase all at once. Those neurons are kind of hidden to us right now because of the indexing I was just talking about. So we don't really know if that was somebody coming on for 6 months and dissolving or what. Actually, we know they're not 6 months and dissolving because they still have that voting power. But yeah, that was a big event, and so some people were like, "Oh man, I was getting 26% with my APY with my neuron, and now I'm getting 23%." So that kind of sucked. But it also is there's like 30, 40 million ICP that got just locked up and no longer can be in the market anymore. So
Yeah, that was the big takeaway I had in conversations about it at the time was that from inside, everyone that was staked and watched their APY dropped was really pissed and viewed this as a bad thing. But externally, the external viewpoint was what an incredible vote of confidence in ICP as a strong long-term investment. Was the read there and was super positive. And so all things considered, if that just hit the market, it would have really crashed the price of ICP as well. And
yeah,
so so much of the way the NNS system is designed is about a give and take and a balancing, right? So that it's designed to grow with the system as people grow, more money comes in, staking, more ICP is being burned by applications, and we see these new uses like, we were watching when Sonic launched their decks, you could watch the graph, shoot up almost vertically as people start converting ICP into cycles for the first time on the first decks on the system.
I mean, think about that from like a company standpoint, right? Like, so if you think of the ICP as a company, like Apple, you don't know that Apple today sold, $7 billion worth of iPhones or anything like that, right? You don't have that visibility for the ICP. And for, I mean, this is true for blockchains in general, but I think particularly true for ICP is you can see like, hey, I know, let's say like you like new open chat was on a specific canister or a specific subnet. You could be like, hey, you guys are burning a lot more ICP now than you were 10 months ago. I know that your user traffic is incredible, and I would imagine if you're like in a startup and you're looking for money, to be able to like say like, hey, look, here's our revenue numbers or here's our user growth numbers, and then to be able to back it up with publicly available data that anyone else could verify, that's got to be a pretty good strong slide deck that you're putting together. And if you're putting that slide deck together, maybe you want to put it on Deck.go, which is a IC platform. So
Way to sneak that plug in there. I like
yeah.
it. No, I totally agree. I think it's one of the most interesting things about the way crypto projects work and ICP in general is, and your nomination kind of gets your proposal really gets to the heart of this, where it is um, open source but anonymous, and really balancing those two
Hmm.
ideas where you want to be able to identify all these neurons. I think it's important to mention we don't know who those neurons belong to, and we don't know how much ICP those neurons have. They're not connected directly to a wallet. All we can see is the voting power
Hmm.
of them, and that's it. And so your data is anonymous, it is safe, it's not directly connected by these things, but you can kind of peek on lift up the carpet and see what's going on underneath. Maybe that's a bad analogy. You can pop the hood and see how the engine works, and see all the different pieces. This is like a bad analogy factory I'm running over here.
Do you have a
Maybe
third? Things come in
we'll
threes.
release it. It's like a double-edged sword, a
There you go.
two-way
Good job.
street,
Nice.
a and so yeah, I think the ability to pop it open and see that combination of open source and exposed but anonymous is super interesting and
Yeah.
exciting and powerful. And it lets the stuff you do in your newsletter is exactly that. And to me, It's just this giant wall of numbers that are big numbers that are changing all the time. But you look at it and you can kind of see these stories and threads and characters. You see Game of Thrones and I just see the Matrix code falling in front of me. And it's so interesting to see the different stories that you pull out. And so I think that may be, kind of what your proposal is really asking to do is, hey, just let me complete this data set. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not trying to expose anyone. I'm not trying to reveal any secrets. It's more like I'm trying to tell the story of what the ICP data is telling me, and I'm working with only part of the resources that I need to do it.
Right, and not just me, but really lower the bar so other people who have a basic level of, let's say, programming or data science experience can do the same thing. Because that's the other thing is I don't want to gate it off to where there's only a handful of people who can do this kind of stuff. You want it to be really just anyone who wants to do it, can do that verification, that data verification. They can have access to the data set, and then that way, then that's how you get that true lack of trust, right? You don't want to have to trust Kyle that he's doing his analysis right and that he's going to tell you the truth in the analysis and not really try to flip things around. You don't have to worry about that if the bar is low enough that anyone else can also verify that. So
I trust you. I
I know,
trust you like the code. So
and that's your downfall there, Jesse.
that's the arbitrage
That's
opportunity and trust that I present here. Cool. Well, like I said, I'm on record as a yes, so I'm in the bag, supporting this proposal, and Definity has come out, and so I think everyone listening should go out there and vote yes right now if you haven't, or make sure you have your neurons set to follow someone that
Hmm.
is voting yes on this.
You're not getting your rewards if you're not following or manually voting on these governance topics. So
Yep. Yep. And so I have mine set to the ICP Maximalist Network, which Kyle, you are a voting member of too. You just have your like little finger. You got your fingers in you're the guy behind the curtain, pulling all the strings on ICP. I feel
I don't know that it feels that way. I
like
probably would say I'm involved in too many things, and that's exhausting. But
that's why we're starting a podcast.
exactly.
Well, what else is going on? Anything else you want to cover here?
I don't. Did you want to get into? Well, let's definitely get into your crypto for community. I mean, we kind of touched a lot on what
We
you
touched
wrote
on it.
there,
Yeah,
but
I'll talk a little bit about that. That'd be great. So, I this has been actually something I was working on for a while. It was sort of designed to be kind of my big summation of everything I've learned about ICP up until this
Mhm,
point. Was really trying to think critically about how we market and talk about ICP. And one of the problems I've diagnosed is the culture of Definity, which I think really strongly informs the culture of the internet computer community, is based in academic research
mhm,
and research and development. And it's very sort of scientifically based. And I think it's fantastic. I think it does really, really positive things for the culture of the community. I think we get a lot less of the toxic positivity that you see in a lot of crypto communities. You
mhm,
see a lot more really intelligent debate. You see people inviting discussion and dissent in a way that you don't see in other spaces where everyone is expected to just be, hoorah, this is perfect, let's go. There's a lot more of a critical back and forth. I want the internet computer to be the best possible version of itself,
mhm,
and digging into it really gets there. I think that kind of limits it from a marketing. I think kind of deep down in its bones, the internet computer is being run by utopian research computer scientists that want to make the dream system. And I think sometimes they kind of struggle for how to communicate and talk about it from like a cold, hard marketing capitalist kind of perspective, which
yeah,
is what so many projects are really good at. And there's so many projects out there that are kind of vaporware, right? They're all promise. I'm not going to call out any specific, platforms like Cardano or anything. I think that'd be bad form here. But just generally, those things are out there, and ICP isn't that. We're shipping. You can build your application on ICP right now. You can go in. You can vote on proposals. You can get features added. I mean, this train is up and running and really gaining speed, and so I was thinking, we talk about like the blockchain singularity and this sort of far off future that the internet computer offers. And I was trying to think, okay, but what can I do with it? What do you do? What is the utility of the internet computer? And what I came up with was that the internet computer is crypto for communities,
Hmm.
and that the internet computer is really, we touched on this earlier when we were talking about Discover and how building a DAO is a native ability on Discover, because building communities is inherently a big part of ICP. And you look at how the voting system works, even how, like, what you've gone through with creating a proposal, all of these different pieces really kind of led me to this sort of marketing conclusion that what it's really good at is building community. And so the idea is, and I'll link to the essay I published, re stating a lot of the core features of the internet computer, but in this new context of how do they add community, right? So on-chain hosting is a really great example of this. That if you want to build something on Ethereum, you have to outsource all of your storage to, IPFS or to
Hmm.
Amazon. Your front end, you have to outsource there. Whereas everything can be hosted in-house with the internet computer for a really, really affordable price, which means building cryptocurrency, either a token or NFTs or anything, any of that functionality, all that blockchain power can be available to your community at an affordable price.
Hmm.
Same thing with reverse gas fees. Having to pay somewhere between $30 and $200 every time you want to mint something or write to the blockchain on Ethereum raises the bar and becomes a stumbling block for people getting involved in the ecosystem. That reverse gas fee eliminates that. It makes it much, much easier to get involved. Again, meaning if you want to build crypto into part of what you're doing, you can do it much more easily and it's much more available to your group. Same thing with the internet identity, right? And so you can, most crypto systems you have to interact with on a financial basis in order to participate. And that's not true for the internet computer either. You can use the internet identity, you can log in, you don't have to spend money to get in there. And then the governance piece too. And that, again, that sort of, I don't know, what's a positive version of the fish rots from the head, right? It's like sets the tone that this idea of community and voting and DAO like decision making, it goes through the culture of every single piece. And so that was kind of, this idea I wanted to get out there, that if you want to build a community, the internet computer is a great place to do it. And that the feature set really encourages the kind of activities that we want to see happening here.
Right. Yeah, when I read your article, what kind of came across, at least what I was seeing, is that assuming that most of the people who are going to read the article are going to be crypto interested, um, is that if
Crypto
you're
curious.
crypto curious, yeah, or really people who have kind of already been pilled a little bit at least. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
coming into reading that article and you're thinking like, oh, the internet computer is basically Ethereum, like a competitor for Ethereum. Um, Hopefully by the time they read that article, they're like, oh, no, 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 my mental model is wrong. This isn't a competitor for Ethereum. This is a competitor for the internet stack as it stands today.
Yep.
Right. And that's kind of the mental model of like, no, we're not just trying to put DeFi or, or even just, we're not just trying to do NFTs. Like, we're not just trying to copy something that's already in crypto, but rather it's a whole different market or a whole different mindset that the community really should be focused on. So when you talk about like marketing the internet computer, which again I'll say, Dfinity doesn't seem to be their core competency, and I'm glad about that for a lot of reasons. But it is one of those things, like if we're marketing in the compute in it, if we in the community are marketing the internet computer, it's more like, hey, you know how you can do these, how like web 2 is, you have Twitter. Imagine if you had Twitter, but money could really move easily between your tweets, or you could easily tip, every time Kyle tweets something really smart and I give him a heart, send them a little bit of ICP. Like that kind of stuff just is natively going to work a lot better on the internet computer than it will on Twitter. Or like you're saying, for the community, you can build a community online, which it seems like is really the future is moving that way, is that a lot of your community is going to be online as opposed to in real life. And it just, the internet computer just seems perfect of a solution for that to
Yeah,
build
what
on.
I find with a lot of, crypto technology in general is you start explaining it and you really need to go back to basics in like a
Yeah.
real fundamental way and then build up from this. the money piece is digitally native and then build out from there. And that's what
Mm.
creates all these super cool, interesting opportunities that are so different, because it's not, hey, we're going to run a credit card here, or things
Yeah.
like that. It's that you can have these internal pieces, and the power of the token, can be applied in lots and lots of different interesting and novel ways. And that's what's such an exciting moment I feel like we're at right now with the internet computer, is we're standing at the precipice of breakout hits, right?
Hmm.
There's so much cool, exciting stuff happening on the DEX level, on the social media level, on like as a publishing platform, on the NNS, on the SNS, the Bitcoin integration, financial application, like the list goes on. And all of these different spaces are primed for mainstream breakout hits at any moment. And so in the
Yeah.
future, right now, when you're interacting with crypto, because you have to set up your wallet, you have to, make sure get your MetaMask working, you have to get your, plugged into all these different systems. And in the future, I don't think it's going to really be like that. And the internet computer paves the way to
Yeah.
that sort of the crypto stuff is just an implementation detail, right? It's just in the background. That's not the work you're trying to do. You're here because you're building a community, for example, or
Yeah.
any number of different projects. You've got a game, you're building your massive multiplayer World of Warcraft competitor that with a digital currency that's worth real money, you
Right.
know. Like there's so many different ways you can build out on this sort of digital native currency that really kind of destroys what came before it and builds something entirely new. And, I'm not really a maximalist where I'm like every single thing in the world is, the dollar is going to be eliminated and it's going to be replaced with crypto. I don't think that. I think much more likely we're heading to a future where cryptocurrency represents 20, 30, 40% of the world economy. And this is how we get there, is
Yeah.
on mainstream applications that have crypto as a function, as a feature, and that build out real world utility that people are really, really excited about. And
Yeah.
all the speculation we see in the token markets, in the NFT market, that is smoke because there is a fire burning, right? That there
Mm.
is just so much potential and so much excitement. And we don't even know. It's the same thing with the iPhone too. It's hard to remember, the iPhone. I think of Twitter apps as such an exciting thing at the beginning of the iPhone, where that was just a whole new way of communicating on the internet. And I mean, where would be crypto communities be without Twitter now? It's amazing me how reliant on Twitter so much crypto conversations are. And I'd love to see those, built in a new place too.
Whatever the Twitter killer is, it'll be started on Twitter. Basically, it'll be launched from
You'll
Twitter.
read about it on Twitter and be like,
Yeah.
let's get
Like
out of here.
if District is destroying, yeah, if District destroys Twitter, it's going to be because people were advertising District on Twitter, kind of thing.
Well, we start the conversation, but I mean that's where Instagram started in a lot of ways too. When I first started using
Yeah.
Instagram, it was as an image host for Twitter, because I'm old enough to remember back when Twitter didn't actually support uploading its own images, right?
Hmm.
And so you could import your social graph from Twitter into Instagram back in those days.
Mm.
And so no, I think it's interesting and exciting. I mean, I've also got some ideas for an Instagram competitor on I'm just gonna give away free ideas here if you're out there for applications I would like. Is I love Instagram stories, which is obviously a wholesale ripoff of
Mm.
Snap stories, but that's where you post an image and it's sort of passive. It doesn't feel like, if you post 100 things, it doesn't feel like you're flooding people's timelines in quite the same way that it does with other posting
Hmm.
on Twitter and the main Instagram feed. And then after 24 hours, those images disappear, right? So it's a very sort of temporary, ethereal kind of social media posting type that disappears. I think it'd be really cool to have a stories competitor built on the internet computer, where people following your stories have the option to mint your
Mm.
images or videos as NFTs if they want to save them for the future. And so it actually
Ah.
creates like a little minting, and the reverse gas model opens up really cool opportunities for. And again, just showing a little bit of my thinking about things I'm excited about with the NFT possibilities, is cheap and cheerful, right? You can mint
Yeah.
those for the equivalent of $1, or a
Or even less.
0.01 ICP or something like that. These things can be very, very inexpensive, but provide really cool, interesting ways of sharing them. Recipe collections can be built out as NFTs. All tokenization offers really novel, interesting ways of integrating commerce and providing liquidity for artists and money for people, and making those tools available to non-developers, to artists and creators and makers, I think is super exciting. So that's my call for an application.
So
I'll take
imagine.
10% founder stock
Well,
in
hold on,
if
hold on,
you
hold on,
build
hold on.
that.
Yeah, we're gonna have to trash this episode because you're onto something. Imagine what your idea was there, but instead of like your post is active for 24 hours, it's just active until the first person mints it, and then it's taken down. So you have a little bit of like competition there. You maybe have photographers who take scenery photos or things like that, or maybe you have like a grandmother who wants to mint the picture of her grandson, at Christmas time or something like that. Or you could even do it where, so the poster gets to set, here's the mint price. So then that whole transaction is easily facilitated on the internet computer, right? The transfer of the ICP to the poster and the NFT to the buyer. And then you could even do something like where it's like, hey, people can mint this 5 times. The first time it's, one ICP, the second time it's going to be 2 ICP, three, you could almost get into like some things like that to where you get a little bit of where you're like, I'm okay with a bunch of people having this photo, but the first one gets it cheaper. And then I love that idea.
All right, so I get 10% and Kyle can have 5% for that idea. I think that's what that's worth there. That's actually kind of how that's a little bit how Bob NFTs is structured.
Yeah.
So that's we're Bob Bodley's guys everywhere.
I'm telling you, 1 degree
His
separation.
1 degree of Bob. He has his Bob NFTs, an experimental NFT system where you mint an NFT based on that points to any content that he has developed anywhere on the internet. And so I like to mint off tweets where he mentions me, and newsletters where I get mentioned.
He's going to
But the
start doing that.
price,
So he can basically create a revenue model where he just starts mentioning your name in tweets and forces you to have to mint those.
I've had to stop minting so many. I felt
Uh,
like I was developing. I'd have to explain my Bob NFT addiction to my
yeah.
wife, and that feels like a lot.
Can, can,
But
can I can I
as you
tell can I
point
tell
to
a
his
funny story?
content, yeah, well, I
So
was gonna say, so the price of his content doubles every time
yeah,
you reuse the same one. So I think I was like, oh, I'll just mint ICP Guide, Bob's, beginner text introduction to the internet computer, and then I went to do it, and I was like, 5 ICP, absolutely not. I don't want to mint it that bad because it
is
was
it
very,
is it
very popular.
wow. So part of that is because you mentioned about like, oh, I got to tell my wife about these, all this money I'm spending on these Bob NFTs is so they launched in December, and I remember I really really badly wanted to mint the Bob has a famous Twitter thread where he says, here's what all the things you can do here's some ideas of what we can do with NFTs on the IC. And I wanted to mint. There was a couple of those I really wanted to mint just because they were such great novel ideas, and I didn't want to have to pay more than the base minimum price. So I was waiting up late at night. It was supposed to launch at like, let's say 10 p.m. My wife's like, "Hey, you coming to bed?" And I said, "No, I got to get some Bob NFTs." And she, and then that kicked off a whole conversation about like, what is an NFT and who
Who's
is
Bob?
Bob? Yeah, yeah.
What
It's
is he
like
doing in our
state.
bedroom?
It's like the State Farm commercial. Who's
Yeah,
who are
who
you on
you
the
on the
phone with?
phone with? Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then, but then there was some technical difficulty, so the launch didn't go until like 2 a.m. And it was just one of those things where I was like, I've already waited. It's now 11. I've already waited an hour. I can wait a little bit longer. Okay, now it's midnight. I've waited 2 hours. I can wait a little longer. And then at the end of the night, like so when it finally launched, I got the ones I wanted at the base price. And then the next morning, my wife's like, "Hey, what time did you come to bed?" And I was like, "Oh, it was like 3 a.m." And she's like, "Well, what is it about these things that made you stay up all night long to get?" And I was like, well, honestly, honey, it's just really I was cheap. But I got what I wanted, and except for a good night's sleep, I got what I wanted.
Well, I think what's really driving you there too is not it's not like, oh my God, this Bob NFT is my investment that I'm gonna retire on. I don't think
Yeah,
any of us think it's that. It's exciting to participate in the cutting edge new stuff that's happening in the community that you're vested in,
yeah,
right? I mean, that to me is what really drives my interest in Bob NFT is I want to support Bob as sort of a technical creative person and an artist making these cool tools. The Bob NFT system is also open sourced and was actually a reference point for, we were talking about the Motoko Bootcamp, to
Hmm.
bring look at that, bringing it right back to where we started. The code from that actually was used as sample code for helping develop NFT minters
Nice.
as well on the system. And so some of the projects are recycling his open source code to create, these different systems. And so I
So
think it's not about, yeah.
I'm coming back to your idea because you're onto something here. Like you could take district and you can make it so that if you had a post that somebody could then mint that post, and not only that, by minting it, they can basically have the right to pull it off district. So like you could almost imagine this content creator economy where people post stuff out and it's public until somebody decides that they want to basically control that content. I don't know. There's something
I
there.
think you're developing the Gong Show as a censorship model is what we're backing into here. It seems like, I think I'd like the NFT minting to be a positive thing that promotes the
Oh,
post as opposed to deleting it
oh,
from
yeah.
the internet.
You don't like, you like freedom and more than money. So I think a personality difference just
Well,
came
hold
out
on
between this
now. I'm not going to
conversation.
let that kind of character assassination just go unanswered.
Oh man. Okay. So what else do we got here? I think we've been going for about an hour now, right?
Well, I think so. I'm ready to bring us into a segment here. So
Okay.
I'm ready for, we have our Ask Neurotic segment
Hmm.
where we would like questions from you, our faithful neurotic people, neuroticians. We'll workshop that. But we'd love to have some questions from our audience about what you'd like us to cover, questions you want answered, burning, mysterious questions about Kyle's mysterious past and how he got here, and if his parents were murdered in an alleyway and that's why he has to avenge them through statistical analysis.
I'm just gonna
Uh,
say, hey, you've never seen me and Dom in the same place, Dominic Williams in the same place at the same time. I'm just gonna point that out.
I've never seen either of you in a place at a time. Just on the, I don't, how do I know this isn't a deep fake right now?
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
would have I
so
would have chosen
we've
a better I would have been a lot better looking if this was a deep fake.
it would have been Keanu Reeves or Tom Cruise. I'm
Ryan
talking
Gosling,
to
that guy's
here.
so good looking. Jeez.
Hey, girl. So uh, so we got a question here from Twitter user All Blacks Forever. So I believe this is coming from New Zealand. Their rugby team is the New Zealand All Blacks, and they do that very scary Maori war chant to intimidate the opposing team at the beginning of every game, and it works on me. I'm very scared of Kiwis. And so he asked us to chime in on Dominic's proposal related to tax governance and staking. This is a little bit outside of my area of expertise, but do you want to summarize the proposal and then talk? We can talk a little bit about the reaction to it.
Yeah. Oh gosh. So the proposal is essentially, what's the best way to describe this? So if you think about maturity right now in the NNS, so I'm going to use a lot of terms. I'm just going to assume, if you're not familiar with the NNS, you might want to just fast forward because this is going to just have, assuming that you're familiar with that. But essentially, the proposal is for, there's really two main changes. One is for that users in the NNS will have the choice. So none of this is forced; it's all opt-in to, instead of doing a maturity thing where you accumulate maturity and then you have the choice of either merging it or spawning a neuron and getting the ICP for it after 7 days, you instead could stake that maturity. So essentially then the maturity becomes staked maturity and it counts almost the equivalent of like having ICP but without having ICP. So you can earn more rewards. You earn rewards on top of your staked maturity. You can vote with that staked maturity. And the whole idea is that when you convert it to ICP, certain jurisdictions may count that as a taxable event, or they may even count as a taxable event the fact that you got maturity. So the idea is if you had staked maturity, there's certain characteristics about it that make it less likely to be a taxable event. I think particularly in the United States. Then, in addition to that, when you convert that into ICP, there's going to be a price modulation function where the amount of ICP you get when you convert that staked maturity to ICP is going to modulate by up plus or minus 5% based on the recent USD price of ICP. So if the price has been going down, you would get less ICP. If the price was going up, you would get more ICP. The idea being that again, I think it's a tax thing where if you can't guarantee the amount of ICP you would get from your maturity, then it's less likely to be considered a taxable event. So you can delay. It's really about delaying your tax liability. And then two, the idea is it would create ICP price stability because you would discourage people from converting to ICP and selling in a down market, and encourage people to sell in an up market. Um, so yeah, so the that's a long. I mean, I don't even know how long that was, but I feel like that's the shortest I could have possibly said that, and it was still a while. The One of the biggest controversies, I guess, around this is just how complex it is. Um, but there's a lot of people who see the benefit of I mean, so some of the I would say some of the people who are going forward are saying, hey, it's an opt-in, so you don't have to do it, even if the option's there. B, it probably will help a lot of people with their tax situations and encourage people to um, continue staking and add compounding their stake on the ICP. So there's going to be less ICP sold just to pay taxes. Um, and my mouth is dry now, so I'm going to stop talking.
No, I think that was really great because I feel like I personally don't understand an awful lot about it, and that helps clarify a lot of it. Um, the reaction to this has been mixed. I think would be a generous way to put it. I think the other piece of context that's important to provide here is a lot of this is kind of projecting and guessing exactly what cryptocurrency taxes are going to look like in the United States. And so, if you live in any other civilized country with a better tax system than the United States has, which would be all of them, based on my limited experience as a U.S. citizen, um, the tax code as it regards to cryptocurrency, let's call it a work in progress right now. There is some stuff that is there, but it is largely unknown and things are kind of being worked out on the fly. And so one of the big objections I've seen to this proposal is it's forecasting where they think it might go in the future, but not, it doesn't really, we don't really know. So it's kind of making decisions based on assumptions of things we don't know. There's some frustration that it feels like this proposal is looking at, issues that are kind of, I mean, for lack of a better way, rich people problems, I guess would be one of the complaints about it. And I saw that Cycle DAO came out against it officially today. Arthur Falls' Cycle DAO project, and so they really are sort of taking the temperature of the community, which has come out pretty negative. Do you have sort of a personal take on this at this point?
I still haven't voted. I know the majority of the ICPMN voters haven't voted yet. I think probably only 3 or 4 have, and part of that is if you're following the ICPMN, if we were to vote, and if our neuron were to vote, it would basically mean that you couldn't manually vote. So we want to make sure people have a time period where they can manually vote in case they do have a strong opinion and don't want to follow us for this particular proposal. Um, I'm torn between it. I think originally I didn't like it just because of the complexity and because taxes seem to not really be something that we can optimize because of the reasons you said, Jesse, and also probably not really a core function that we should be thinking about. But at the same time, it's opt-in, and so I don't know. I don't know. I still don't know how I'm going to vote. I've only got 2 more days to vote, so I got to get that in. But um, yeah, I mean, it's CycleDAO voted against. Definity hasn't voted. I'm not sure if they will vote, but it's a pretty close. Um, it's kind of a funny week. We've had 2 controversial proposals going through now, so it's close right now.
Laws and sausages, those are the two things you don't want to see get made, right?
Hey, but this really is kind of a key point about the NNS is we're kind of learning a little bit, but also the community is really strong in the sense of people participate in debates and participate in debates without it getting ugly so far, which honestly in 2022 that's pretty impressive. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
I agree, and I think we don't want to see every proposal passed, right? I think the healthy debate, and if it gets kicked down, you can always come back with more feedback and take that feedback to heart and create a proposal that will pass too. And so, no, I totally agree. It's exciting to see the DAO democracy work, right? And that's kind of the big picture, is good or bad on every proposal. And there'll be proposals we like that fail, and there'll be proposals we don't like that pass for any number of reasons, because people have different, in a democracy, you don't always get your way, has been
Yeah,
my personal experience. So
that's kind of true
I'm
in life
excited
too.
to see where it lands, and it's cool. I think this could be a fun little beat for us to follow up on week to week, is kind of checking in on how the process of the democracy is working, not just what's passing and failing too.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're getting towards the end of the show here. I'm proud of us. We're getting there. We have recommendations, is one of the recurring things we're going to do, which is Kyle and I are going to recommend something. It can be ICP related. It could be a book. It could be a movie. It could be some sort of just generalized healthy activity, which I feel like is what Kyle might have for me today, based on our show notes here. So, Kyle, what are you recommending?
I recommend all the parents out there listening to this, keep your kids healthy because, with COVID and the kids being home, at least within my house, we haven't really dealt much with sickness in the last 2 years. And all of a sudden, there's a cold and a stomach virus, both of which are like ravaging my home. And it's just been 3 weeks of whew. So, anyways, learn from my mistake, keep your kids healthy.
I have also been dealing with it. I guess my recommendation is paper towels and Lysol wipes would be my. No, my family too. We've also been dealing with it going around and trying to. I kind of forgot. Right?
Yeah,
We
yeah,
like there was no flu season last year. We've all been living indoors as hermits and covering our mouths and washing our hands like
yeah.
sensible human beings, I guess. And it's been I'm slowly re-entering the world here, and it's been different. And so we've been dealing with a little family sickness too.
I mean, even just the simple things like, "Hey, kids, don't pass around that bowl of popcorn. Like, stop doing that. That's why you're all getting sick." Kind of thing. We got to reestablish those behaviors, I guess.
You gotta make your kids each one individual separate bowl
Yeah,
of
I know.
popcorn with their own different
I,
flavors.
I've got 4 kids, so just doing that, my dishwasher's full. Right?
Yeah.
There's just too many
how do you
people.
how do you make popcorn?
We have well, I used to do a popper, like it was a pot. You pour the
Hmm.
corn kernels in, and then you have like a little handle that you could stir it with. But my wife got me because that's kind of a pain to wash. My wife got me. It's just this little what's the material? Kind of like a flexible plastic thing, and you basically just pour your kernels in there, throw it in the microwave for like 2 minutes,
Hmm.
and it just makes perfect popcorn. So you don't even have to do the like it's as easy as a microwave bag, but you get
Hmm.
like um, you get a better quality, I guess, than the microwave bag. So
We might have to try that out. My wife loves popcorn, and so I make her a lot of popcorn, and I just do it on the stove top. Just like pot with a lid, shaking it the old fashioned way.
let's do so. I'll go upstairs. I'll find out what the brand is. I'll let you know, and then let's reach out to that brand to see if they want to sponsor this.
If they want to sponsor, because popcorn, got to get that popcorn on the blockchain. We've been doing blockchain free popcorn like idiots this
Yeah, I know.
entire time.
Seriously.
So, yeah, my recommendation this week, I'm going to go with a TV show. So I've been watching a lot of the stuff that Apple TV has been making, and they have a new show out right now called Severance that I'm really, really enjoying. It's kind of a dark sci-fi thriller. It's actually created and directed, and I think written by Ben Stiller, but
Oh
it's not
man.
really a comedy. It stars Adam Scott from Party Down and Parks and Rec.
Yep.
And the premise is sort of a dark future. They all work for the characters work for a company where you go through a surgery that then makes it so that your brain maintains separate memories for when you're at work and when you're at home. And so when you are at work, you only remember being at work. And when you're at home, you don't know what you're doing at work. And obviously it's all very mysterious, but it has a
Mm.
super, super good cast. I've been really enjoying it. Christopher Walken just showed
Oh
up in
man.
it. So really it's sort of a slow burn, I guess I would say. It reminds me of a TV show I really liked last year called Devs, which
Okay.
Alex Garland made. He did Annihilation and Ex Machina. That stars Nick Offerman. So that was another sort of slow burn kind of
Mm.
sci-fi thriller kind of show.
So Severance, is it like one season of episodes?
Yeah, it's airing right now. So
Okay.
it's one season. Yeah, that's right. So it's airing right now. It's like hour-long episodes. I think there's like 8 or 10 episodes total. I think 4 or 5 have aired so far, and I just got caught up on the show last night.
Worth
So
if you don't have Apple TV, is it worth getting Apple TV to watch it?
I mean, that's kind of a bigger question,
Okay.
right? I mean, what I would say is if you don't have, I have like all the Apple services. So I'm on like a bundle where I get the TV for free. If you
They,
buy an Apple device, you get a certain amount of time for free, or you can get someone to add you to
yeah.
your account. My recommendation is if there's some TV show you really, really want to see on a service, wait till the show's over, sign up for 1 month, binge the
Just
show, and then just cancel it after that.
yeah.
And so if you do that, if you haven't seen Ted Lasso, you should
Yep.
watch
Yep.
Ted Lasso, which is, I thought about recommending that, but I was like, it's a little passe at this point to recommend. That feels like old news. But
Ted
if you
Ted
haven't watched Ted Lasso, watch Ted
it
Lasso.
was that was the show the world needed.
Right?
It really was. Just a good
Yeah.
nice feel good nice people. Well, I guess he doesn't really win, but nice people can survive in this world
He
kind of show.
wins thematically, I
He
guess.
wins our hearts.
Yeah, he doesn't win in terms of soccer whatsoever,
Well,
though.
don't
So
don't don't don't
spoil
ruin it. Yeah.
spoilers.
Oh gosh.
I don't think there's a spoiler you could give for that show that would ruin it because the experience of watching it is so
Yeah.
positive, and you kind of the experience of watching that show, you go through the experience that the characters do, which is the Jason Sudeikis character of Ted Lasso is irritating and super positive and people centric and kind of annoying, and you go through the same experience the characters on the show does, which is I'm annoyed at this person, I'm annoyed at this person, I'm so in love with Ted
Yeah,
Lasso.
yeah.
How did I live without this positivity, this light shining into my life? I need it.
Yeah, man. I watched that show and I was like, I want to be a better person after watching the show. So it
I
did
watched
its job.
I was that show and I was like, I want to be a world class soccer player. I'll slip in one more little extra recommendation then while we're on it. Brett Goldstein, who plays Roy Kent
Okay.
on the show. Roy Kent is sort of he's the captain of the team season 1. He's sort of he's an older former star at the end of his career who is very grumpy, let's say, in his interpersonal skills. In real life, he's an extremely nice guy who's
Ah,
nothing like his character. And he has a podcast called Films to Be Buried With that I really enjoy. It's a movie nerd podcast, and he interviews mostly British celebrities that I've never heard of.
okay.
And they have the premise is that the guest has died, and the guest explains how they died in some sort of comical fashion. And then he explains that in heaven they love movies and they want to know what movies you're bringing with you. And so the guests answer like a series of questions about what's the first movie you remember seeing, what movie was your sexual awakening, what's a movie you love that everyone hates, what's a movie, what do you consider the best movie of all time? And he interviews a lot of real film nerds, and it's good stuff. I listen
Hmm.
to a lot of movie podcasts, but it's mostly bad movie podcasts. So it's kind of fun to listen to some of the good movie podcasts too.
Okay. All right. What's that called?
That's
Oh,
Films to Be Buried With. I can
okay.
I'll add it. I'm gonna put it in the podcast, and then I have to do it. It'll be in the show notes.
Okay.
So if you
Good.
look in your podcast player of choice that you're listening in right now, and there should be a bunch of links connecting to all the different stuff we've talked about. And at the very end there should be a link to Ted Lasso and a link to Brett Goldstein's Films to Be Buried With.
Nice.
Well, before we sign off, I have one more item of business for us here for our listeners, actually, which is if you are listening to this, as we said, you're looking at this as in your podcast player, you are looking at probably some very terrible album art that I put together for this podcast, and I would like to apologize for the low quality of the art. But we would love something awesome, and we would really ideally love to get it from the community. And so, what we're looking for is submissions for some art to become our official Neurotic podcast album art. What do you want? Let's give them some ideas. I'd say we'll give a couple. We'll workshop a few things that we think would be good ideas. But you are welcome to submit anything you want. It's up to you guys, and we'd love to see what you come up with.
Yeah, I mean, I think something with the Definity logo would be appropriate. Working off the whole neuron concept is probably beneficial. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so you could represent neurons in it. You could do some sort of brain imagery. Kyle and I encourage you to draw cartoon versions of ourselves hosting this podcast and having very engaging conversations in it. Feel free to kind of get wild. We'd love it to say Neurotic Podcast, the Internet Computer Podcast with Jesse and Kyle, and just be appealing and welcoming and
I
you
mean,
know
so this is an audio podcast, so they don't see us. So we probably, if they want to do cartoons of us, it's for Jesse, just kind of imagine like Brad Pitt, but maybe a little bit more.
slightly balding. I'd say
I
balding.
was
I've
gonna say better. I
thinning.
was gonna say better looking, but that's all right.
I appreciate that. A younger,
A younger
earlier,
Brad
more
Pitt,
of a
yeah.
7 years in Tibet kind of style
Oh
Brad Pitt.
yeah, yeah, just with shorter hair. That's perfect.
Sure,
And then
sure.
again, I think if you think of like Ryan Gosling from really any Ryan Gosling movie, I think that pretty much sums me up to a T.
Yeah, a real nice guys kind of. We could kind of be nice guys kind of vibes going on here.
Yeah,
That would
yeah.
work. That would be great. Now, I don't think we can ask people to work for free, so it
hmm
would be appropriate to offer some sort of bounty on this art
Let's
too.
throw some NFTs, right? I don't know. I would almost say name, except for a Bitcoin flower and or G metal. Um, well, yeah, like we'll think of something off air. But yeah, there'll be some NFTs. I've got some
It'll
apes
come
I
out of
can.
Kyle's wallet. I
I'm,
think that's the important thing here. So you will a bespoke, formally owned by Kyle Langham NFT is on the line
there
here,
you go.
which I think should make it more valuable, right?
I
That kind
think
of
so.
providence.
I
Yeah,
think so. Maybe multiple NFTs. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
you'll pull it out of your NFT seller that you have to keep all of your NFTs safe at home, and there should be some cool stuff. So we're excited to see what you come up with, and we'll be back next week.
All right. Thanks for making it through this long.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you next week. Bye.
See ya. Yeah, actually I have to jump pretty soon. Everyone's waiting for me to go out to dinner. So
Oh no.
it's
All
it's
right.
almost
Well,
6 here.
tell your sick family that I said hello and thanks for loaning you out to me for a couple hours here. I
This was fun.
I have a very exciting dinner reservation tonight too. I'm
Ooh,
excited.
where are you going? Are you getting tacos?
I'm not getting tacos. I'm actually going to one of my favorite Japanese restaurants, which
Ooh,
is it's an izakaya style place, which is like Japanese bar food.
okay.
And so I feel like this is like it's like describing crypto culture where they're doing a pop-up featuring food from another restaurant that doesn't currently exist. And so there was a restaurant in LA called Porridge and Puffs, and
Mhm.
they made sort of like fancy rice porridges, and they're like in-house, everything fermented, really, really beautiful plates. And so that's a place called Porridge and Puffs. During the pandemic, they closed that restaurant and opened a new thing called Fenkite, which got Restaurant of the Year from the LA
Oh
Times
wow.
and is amazing. And I can't afford it's like prefix, like 10 course
Okay.
dinner, and I can't afford to eat there. So their old restaurant is popping up at my other favorite Japanese restaurant. So I get to go there and order both chicken skewers and some porridge. So
Oh,
I'm pretty
nice.
pretty excited about
Man, you're living large tonight.
it. What are you? Well, dinner will also be at 5:15 since we're taking the baby with us.
Oh yeah.
What are you doing for dinner?
I think so. It's kind of like celebrating that all the kids are, I think, healthy. Everyone went to school today, so that's maybe celebrating
Nice.
that. But we're gonna do barbecue. We got like barbecue
Mm.
joint. It's called
What kind of barbecue? Now we're getting into the real
Not
stuff here.
not so just more standard. So not Korean barbecue. How would you describe this? It's
Like Texas style,
yeah, more yeah,
Maryland style
pulled
barbecue,
no, more like pulled pork,
hmm
ribs. They have a couple they're really known for the
cornbread,
yeah.
collard greens, sort of classic Southern
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
They've got
I need specific regionality. I need to know if it's Asheville style
it's
North
more I was
Carolina
gonna say
bar.
it's gonna be
What kind of
more
sauces are we talking about here? I think that'll help us.
yeah, so they have a black raspberry, but it's more what is this? There's a couple different sauce styles. Um, it's more North Carolina style.
Black raspberry, I do not believe is North Carolina style.
Well, I mean, like in terms of like the ketchup content, isn't that like pretty important?
Yeah, yeah, it's like
It's
a
more thin.
sweeter,
Yeah,
thin, sweet. Yeah,
yeah.
okay, acceptable.
Hey,
What
I
do you
live in
get? What do you get
I'll get
for a barbecue?
pulled
You
pork,
get pulled pork?
just
Yeah. I have a
ground.
smoker here. I like a little Traeger pellet smoker. I make a lot of barbecue.
Mm.
I love it. Although brisket to me
Oh, that
is
is
like
good.
I went to Austin, waited in line for Franklin, did the whole bit.
Okay, nice. Was it worth it?
I mean, it's like a funny question to ask. People are like, "Is it worth waiting in line?" And I'm like, "You have to understand, I bought plane tickets and spent a week to go have this meal. So, like, the couple. I mean, I recommend it as a way to eat lunch on a daily basis? No,
No.
you can't wait 4 hours for most meals. Is it you're on vacation and you get drunk on a case of beer with the med students in front of you and have a great time once? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fantastic. It's the best barbecue brisket I've ever had in my life. I had more brisket that week than would be recommended.
Okay.
I led my family on like a death march of brisket, and they would complain that they're like, I can't believe you took us to three brisket places, three barbecue places today. And I would say, I can't believe we only went to three barbecue
I
places
know. Can you
today.
believe we
So,
only went to three? Was your
I
heart
mean,
at the end of it? Was your heart just basically like you're like down to like one beat per minute? Like it's like I just barely can contain this.
I was like dehydrated, like my body was mummified with salt. I was like cured from the inside
Yeah.
out with salt, and I was just dehydrated for weeks after that. But we had some good stuff. We went out to There's a town. I'll let you go here, but there's a town near just outside of Austin called Love Heart. Now I'm blanking on the name of it. Called Lockhart.
Okay.
And Lockhart is really famous for its collection of barbecue places. There's a bunch of places like 100-year-old barbecue places and stuff like that you go in, and it's been the same employees. And we went deep on some of that barbecue. It was real good. Highly. Maybe that should have been our recommendation: is eat some
Get,
barbecue for
yeah.
dinner.
Yeah.
So, all right, go feed your family. Thank you. I'll see you back here next week.
Yeah, man. It's good talking with you. This was fun.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
All right. Take care, man.